Everyone in this space likes talking about buzzwords and statistics and whatnot, but we think the way to move the space forward is real adoption, real value for customers in applications that they use every day.
Welcome in to another matchup here in Crypto Project of the Year from Coinage, the only community-owned, award-winning media DAO steered by NFT holders and backed by the co-founder of Netflix. I'm the host of Coinage, Zach Usman, coming to you live from our Brooklyn studios, thanks in part to our newest sponsor, Alchemy, the go-to Web3 infrastructure provider that offers the most powerful and reliable suite of APIs, SDKs, and other tooling, all designed with developers in mind. I'm super excited to have with us represented today two of the top projects in crypto. You know them well, and you're going to be able to crown a champion in this celebration of the top projects at Coinage.media. Today we have two huge ones. You got Polygon and you got Flow/Dapper Labs, represented by our two guests today. The CEO of Dapper Labs, Roham Gargazlou, joining us here on Coinage today, along with the CEO of Polygon Labs, Mark, on with us live here on Coinage. And Mark, you haven't been on before, and technically, Roham, you haven't been on before either, because we chatted when I was back at Yahoo Finance, and it kind of triggered all of the cool things you guys have been doing with NFTs at Dapper Labs, and we're going to get into all of that. But Mark, GM, man, welcome to Coinage. It's nice to meet you. Just for people who haven't heard of Polygon before, what is it you guys are bringing to the Web3 space?
Yeah, it's a good question. And thanks for having me here, by the way. So you can think of Polygon Labs as being the developer for the Polygon ecosystem, and we're developing Ethereum scaling solutions. So basically what we started off with is what we refer to as Polygon POS. So it's a sidechain that is extremely inexpensive and very fast and very secure. And what it allows is a ton of projects. And we've seen it across the board, right? Whether it's DeFi or gaming or big brands, NFTs. What we see is that they are able to transact very easily and cheaply on Polygon POS and allows all the users in the world to come over. But we didn't stop with that. What we decided was we want something even more secure. And so we're going to build a layer 2 rollup using ZK technology. And so we launched Polygon ZK AVM. And you can think of Polygon ZK AVM as something that inherits the security from Ethereum while still being extremely fast and cheap. So that's kind of the second solution we rolled out. And then what we later decided to do was essentially take Polygon ZK AVM and say, you know what, anybody should be able to launch this. And we launched what's referred to as Polygon Chain Development Kit, CDK. And what we've seen is massive interest in being able to launch people's own chains, their own chains, right? So we've seen OKX launch X1 on testnet, for example. We've seen, Immutable ZK VM launching very shortly on using Polygon CDK. And so there's been a bunch of interest across the board. And so basically, I think the best way to round out what we're doing is taking, I think, the success that we've had all year in terms of, and last year as well, in terms of onboarding big brands, onboarding Web3 natives, and saying, we're not just going to onboard big brands and Web3 natives. What we're going to give you is also the best tech that you can possibly have in the space. And that's basically what we've been delivering this year.
Yeah, it's been wild to see all the other projects. Again, these are names that you might not expect of ever wanting to or ever being curious about dipping a toe in Web3, but have teamed up with Polygon to do just that. And Roham, on the other side, as I mentioned, I don't need to describe to anyone, whether you're in Web3 or not, what the NBA or the NFL is, but you also added Disney was the big announcements just a couple weeks ago. But for those who don't know what Dapper Labs and Flow is all about, what are you guys focusing on?
Well, I always talk about Flow, and by the way, thanks for having me. Excited to be here. I always talk about Flow as a blockchain built from the ground up for consumer-grade applications. So not just making new tokens and token moving machines, but new kinds of products, new kinds of smart contracts and utility. The things that make Flow different, first of all, it's a layer 1 blockchain, but it's designed from the ground up to help developers make easy to use mainstream level user experiences for their customers. This is now, whether it's a game or a mobile native application, we want to be able to let developers build mainstream quality experiences without compromising composability and decentralization. And then the second major thing I want to talk about that makes Flow different is the Cadence programming language, which much more than just a new programming language, we think of it as the unlock Web3 needs because it makes it safer, faster, and easier for smart contract developers to experiment with new kinds of on-chain logic, new kinds of smart contracts without being scared that they're going to be hacked or spend endless time in audits and reviews. So everyone in this space likes talking about buzzwords and statistics and whatnot, but we think the way to move the space forward is real adoption, real value for customers in applications that they use every day. And the only way to get there is more experimentation, more kinds of even communities like Coinage is building that use the technology to bring people together and create real value. So I'm excited to be here. But one thing I wanted to make clear between Flow and Dapper Labs, Flow was created as a network for NBA Top Shot, and we will be launching Disney Pinnacle and future Dapper Labs projects on top of it. But at this point, Dapper Labs is a minority in every aspect of the Flow network. Flow is independently funded. It's got its own external foundation and development team. And so I'm here representing Flow, but I very much I'm a small part of the community.
Yeah, it's always that's the interesting thing, honestly, as we've put this together, is that all of these community-based projects, you guys are on representing them. But honestly, we could bring on almost anyone from your guys' communities to talk about whether it's Flow or Polygon, because that's the beauty of Web3, is that so much of this building is going on out of people's control. And I guess, Mark, on that front, when it comes to what Rohan was just talking about, there are certain technical perks of each individual project we've been celebrating this year. But when it comes to, I guess, putting and pairing the technology with the business relationships with some of these Web 2 projects, I don't think it's an overstatement to say, whether it is what Flow is doing or Polygon's doing, you guys both are kind of topping everyone when it comes to partnering with major brands. What have you seen in kind of those discussions, Mark, when it comes to what those brands are wanting out of Web3?
Yeah, so it's interesting because while we are focused on what devs actually want, what they're focused on is what their end users want, right? And when you think of what their end users want, they want something, a smooth, good experience that gets the benefits of Web3 without feeling kind of the issues that you can get, like the UX issues that come with Web3. And so what a lot of these projects are looking for is, can you actually do that on a blockchain like Polygon POS or Polygon ZKVM? And that's something that we're very, very focused on, right? So the first step of that is you need to create a blockchain that is actually going to be fast, right? The users don't want to sit there forever. They also want something that's cheap. They don't want to actually have to spend a lot of money on this. They don't have to wait in Web 2, and it's not expensive in Web 2. And so they want that same thing. But then the next level thing that they want is an experience that doesn't have tons of friction just because they're in control of their own assets or their own environment, right? And so the key there is creating a mechanisms to allow that, right? So one of the things that Polygon has always been a leader in is account abstraction, right? So this is a mechanism, for example, to be able to pay gas fees in any token whatsoever. So you don't need to worry about holding ETH or holding Matic. It really just doesn't matter. You can just transact, right? And that's something that is really important to these Web 2 projects because they don't want anybody to actually feel the frictions that you get with Web 3. And so when we're having conversations, a lot of this is educating how it is that Polygon protocols can be used in a mechanism that allows their users to feel no friction whatsoever, but to get this unique benefit, right? Whether it's holding their own assets as like NFTs and actually being able to transact with them, right? Like we've seen this like beautiful relationship, for example, between like Nike, Swoosh, and like EA, right? Like being able to like bring an item that is created on Polygon and being able to like use it in the EA environment is something that is like very unique to Web3 that you don't really see in the Web 2 environment.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of weird, honestly, as a builder in the space now, when we talk about account abstraction and the idea of having it all be on the back end, but having a very seamless experience for users be on the front end. What that might mean for the space if we're not kind of hitting everyone in the head with the whole idea of what an NFT is and what it's important why it's important. And Roham, I guess, that's a similar question to you because, it's what makes these digital trading moments, I suppose, of NBA Top Shot important and unique in that people can own them and trade them. Same thing with what you guys have done with the NFL. Like my brother only owns two NFTs. One is NBA Top Shot and the other one is a Coinage NFT. And, I'm curious to kind of get your thoughts on where the space is moving when it comes to account abstraction.
Yeah, absolutely. And well, we got to get your brother into NFL all day and the Pinnacle beta as well, because two NFTs is nowhere near enough. I
Yeah.
just want to comment on the question you asked in terms of what Web2 brands are seeing in Web3 as well. And of course, it's about expanding new use cases for their customers. But Web3 also gives, especially for folks like NBA, NFL, any IP holder, it gives them a relationship with their fan that they've never had in a digital world before. Because all of their digital relationships with fans has been through these centralized walled garden platforms, where even the brand, as big as NBA or NFL might be, doesn't actually have the power to have that direct relationship with their fan. The fan doesn't have the power to take an asset they purchase on Facebook and take it to Twitter or vice versa. And that just basic kind of insight it gets IP owners very excited, because in the physical world you can buy an NBA jersey and wear it anywhere you want. You can buy a Nike shoe and wear it in the Adidas store. It doesn't matter, and that increased utility actually is what gives those brands the ability to sort of transcend, you know, just being what happens on the court and actually be part of daily life. So I think Web3 is just about taking that power and extending it digitally and being able to create digital fan communities that are much closer to their creators, much closer to the things that they are a fan of, and also own a piece of it. So it's not just you're not just a consumer, but you end up a community participant, you end up a co-creator, so on and so forth. And when it comes to account abstraction, we Flow launched with what was at the time the best user experience in crypto with NBA Top Shot, where users could come in. Not even there was no word NFT in our onboarding path or in our purchase flow. You just use a credit card, or you could come and pay with Bitcoin or Ethereum, and you get these digital trading cards that you can then take into different products and do
Hmm.
interesting things with. But you know the power that account abstraction has is you don't have to choose, do I want a great user experience or do I want that open composability. At least the way it's built in NBA Top Shot today, users can onboard and have sort of the protections of a custodial account where they can use their credit card and not worry about losing seed phrases or things like that. But with
Yeah.
one click, they can link an external wallet. They can take self custody over their assets if they want, and then take that wallet into a universe of other applications, whether it's fantasy products being built on top of Top Shot, whether it's taking your NFTs and taking loans out based on using the NFTs as collateral, whether it's using it in different kinds of games and other social experiences. That can all happen in sort of that open standards world, without breaking compatibility with the original application. So the
Yeah.
implementation of account abstraction is different on every network, but on Flow, because we're layer one, it's built at the protocol layer and has been since the launch of the network.
Yeah, that to me, I think, is kind of the other interesting question that a lot of our community members have. Obviously, as I said off the top, it's impossible to really, I think, compare across project to project because in many cases in Web3, it's an apples and oranges comparison. But at the same time, the one thing that is kind of similar across Web3 is that a lot of these tokens are tradable and that, you have to use them to use maybe some of the services depending on what they're built on. And, I guess that's one of the questions when it comes to how you track the value here, Mark. And I don't know if you have a take on this when it comes to the metrics that you're paying attention to, because as I said, comparing both Flow and Polygon, there's a huge arsenal of brand names attached to you guys both. But when it comes to how you track the value that you're bringing back to your individual networks, I mean, what do you look at, Mark, when it comes to, I guess, tracking that over time for what it means for Polygon and the token?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, The focus for us, right, is being able to have applications that are successfully building on Polygon. Like that's ultimately what we want, right? And so there's two different ways of looking at this. One is kind of the success that Polygon is having in terms of like onboarding devs, because frankly, that's actually the key metric, right? When you get a lot of devs that are building on a Polygon protocol, what you get is basically like a flywheel effect, right? You've got all of these devs that are now going out to all of their users after having built awesome applications, and they can go acquire their users, right? And so at the core, the question is like, what are the smart contracts being deployed? How many devs are there? How are they contributing to maybe the Polygon protocol code base, but then also in terms of like the community of devs? Once you go like one step past that, now you're starting to look at like, okay, what is the impact of those devs, right, in the Polygon ecosystem? And what we start looking at there, right, is obviously on things like NFTs, right, is like the volumes that are actually being traded, liquidity that exists there, how the infrastructure is actually supporting all of that liquidity, what kind of options there are. But then you also go kind of past that, right, and you start looking at like daily active users. You get interested in like gas fees that are getting paid, because there's this really like interesting tension, right, that actually exists in almost every blockchain, which is you actually want a lot of gas fees to be paid because you want the gas to actually the gas reflects the type of transactions and a number of transactions that are happening on a protocol. And so when you're driving a lot of like gas fees, that is a very kind of successful protocol, and you need to weigh that against the user impact that it could have. And that's kind of like the unique, I think, approach that we're taking at Polygon, which is we're not going to build one kind of monolithic chain where all users are impacted by this experience. Instead, what we allow is all these applications to build their own chains where they can control that environment, not be impacted by that environment. And then, as we will end up releasing in the middle of next year, create a level of interoperability between all of those so that they can end up sharing in all of that liquidity, while still kind of maintaining that user experience and generating that kind of like gas fees that you want to be generating on a blockchain.
Yeah, that's, I mean, I guess that's another similarity is I guess a focus on some of those transactions in gaming. Zedrun, another project, by the way, that we've highlighted at Coinage in terms of where they're building. I believe that was a Polygon transition that happened not too long ago. But yeah, I mean, it's an interesting thing, because I think that's another similarity is how do you scale this in a way? Obviously, you can't do all of that on Ethereum base layers. Probably why, Roham, you got Flow over here as well. I mean, are there metrics that you look at specifically as well, Roham, on the side of Flow and kind of tracking some of this stuff beyond just the partnerships?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, all those metrics are important, but the two I would say we keep an eye on most is one, actively used smart contracts, as not just deployed to mainnet, but being used by a significant number of people, and or composed, so being called from different smart contracts, which is increasingly happening on Flow. And then the one I care most about is products that are onboarding new users. So as we launch new products internally through Dapper Labs, as the community brings new products to market, we get really excited about folks that are activating new communities outside of the communities that already exist in crypto and in our core product. So that sort of metric of how many new accounts did this smart contract onboard is something we're sort of instrumenting, and we'll keep a close eye on in 2024 and beyond.
Yeah, I mean, I think, that's the other interesting thing is, when we talk about looking ahead to 2024, right? We've covered a lot of what's been done in the names and the brands, and everyone always wants more. That's how it always goes. The community always wants more and more of all this stuff. And so looking ahead, I think it's a good pivot point as our community weighs in on all this, as the vote opens at coinage.media/vote for what project we should continue highlighting. And our NFT holders get to weigh in on all this, is looking ahead to 2024, because, the enthusiasm in NFTs has gone up, it's gone down. Roham, you and I kind of first met when everything was going on with NBA Top Shot, and as I said, it was kind of the craziness of everything. You had Sotheby's, basically it was wild. And now I think everyone understands the technology and what can be done here. So when you look ahead to 2024, this is the part of the show where some alpha leak is encouraged, perhaps, if there is any to be had. And also what you guys are just kind of most excited about for when you look ahead to 2024. And Mark, you're also stepping into this new role as Polygon Labs CEO. I don't know how long it's been, but congrats, by the way, if I haven't said it to you yet. What has you most excited when you look ahead to 2024 for Polygon?
Yeah, thanks for that. It's been 5 months, and it's been a fantastic 5 months. And so, I split this up because I think both of these are important. One between the tech, and then second with kind of what's happening on the DB side of things. And I think on the tech side, the thing that we announced in middle of this year was Polygon 2.0. And basically that vision is the vision of having a whole slew of L2s that are all kind of interconnected and operating as kind of one, even though they feel like one, even though they're operating as many. And so the most exciting part from a technical perspective is the release of what kind of is an interoperability layer. Ultimately, what it is the ability for all of these chains to come together, share in liquidity, and get the benefits of that shared liquidity while still getting the benefits of the efficiency, cost reductions, and security of being their own kind of independent chains. That's going to be the big upgrade that happens in the middle of next year. We've got a lot of other releases that are going to be interesting from our staking hub, for example, that will allow for all of these chains to decentralize their sequencers and provers, for example. That's going to be super exciting. But on the other side of the house, what we end up seeing is a bunch of launches that are going to happen that have been talked about a lot this year that are actually going to come into play. So one I mentioned earlier, right? So it's the OKX chain, right?
Mm-hmm.
We've seen kind of Coinbase launch its chain, and this is kind of OKX saying, well, we can launch a chain too. And as the second biggest exchange in the world by volume, there is a lot of potential for OKX to have X1 be very successful. And so we're excited about that. I think like on the gaming side, it's probably where we're kind of most excited. From immutable zkVM, which will go live next year, having onboarded hundreds of games with them. We've onboarded probably over 300 games so far.
Yep.
And when you think of the timeline for development of games, it is many years. And that onboarding process started a couple years ago. And so what we get to finally start seeing next year is kind of the fruit of that tree. And what we're going to see is kind of the drop of multiple games, many big names that I think are going to get people extremely excited and finally bring like users to gaming in Web3 in a way that we haven't really had so far. That part's, I think, probably one of the most exciting. And then lastly, I'd say if we go like a little more degen, what we've had is kind of DeFi on Polygon POS that's been very successful. And what you're going to see in early 2024, if you want some alpha, is a lot of excitement around DeFi in Polygon on Polygon zkVM. Literally dozens of apps within months will be launching, with a lot of other add-ons, let's say, that I think are going to get people excited about
Intriguing.
Polygon.
This is an intriguing little tiny tease. I'll accept it as a little tiny tease there, Mark. That works for me. And then, Rohan, we teased ahead to the Disney activation that was announced. It was only a couple of weeks ago, honestly. This is very fresh news. And you mentioned it off the top. I believe, bringing all of those brand names that we've talked about in the Disney ecosystem. You got Star Wars on there, too. I mean, talk to me about what you have planned for next year.
Yeah, I just want to comment. I mean, you mentioned, now that things are well understood, and I think we're actually barely scratching the surface in terms of the creativity and innovation that people are going to see at the application layer, and even the difference in approach between two strong teams, Polygon and Flow, should sort of highlight that there's actually a lot of debate still on what's the right way to build blockchain applications. And we started our journey as Web3 developers, with CryptoKitties and the original NFT standard. And we think it's actually going to be difficult to imagine everybody, running their own chain and sort of being responsible for managing the composability between those between those different layers, just like between shards, just like between L2s. And so for 2024. We're excited to basically invite the rest of the crypto community onto Flow with what will be the biggest network upgrade since we launched the project, as a little bit of alpha. The test network's going live soon. It'll be called Crescendo. And it'll have performance improvements, execution state, optimization, all that stuff. But the biggest things are a major upgrade to the Cadence programming language, and then full EVM equivalence, which means that anybody can bring all of Ethereum's liquidity, smart contracts, and sort of network effects, but be able to compose on top of it seamlessly with Cadence and everything else that makes Flow unique. So we think this lets us tap into the liquidity that exists, tap into the network effects, and similar to maybe parallels on Mac, let people bring the tooling and best in class middleware that they're comfortable with on other networks, but then come and try out what we've been working on for the last few years. Try to build things that aren't possible to build on previous kinds of networks, and ship things to customers that I think are going to change people's perception of what's possible with Web3. So on our end, of course, Disney Pinnacle is sort of going to be our flagship application at the Dapper level, going live next year. But we're also starting to look at new kinds of products that, in particular, start with on-chain logic, and then ask ourselves the question, what more can we do? So it's going to be a big year for the industry, regardless, and we're excited to be part of it.
Yeah, I mean, the enthusiasm, as we've talked about, is already kind of mounting to wrap up 2023, which, of course, as I said, there's so much that went down earlier on in the year. It's a welcome change, I think, for everybody, regardless of which part of Web3 you're building in. But for right now, all that excitement is coming back as we look at all these projects. And as I said off the top, I don't think it's hard to refute. You can't say that Polygon and Flow shouldn't be on this bracket, because what you guys have done this year has been stellar. I think, again, not just for your own individual projects, but for the space as a whole when it comes to onboarding new people and offering exciting ways for people to understand Web3 and what NFTs are all about. So I thank you both for coming on. There is one last question here when we look back, I guess, in terms of what happened this year. More personally, if there were any things that you might have done differently. Roham, I'm not sure if there's anything in your camp when you look back on things that you'd go back and do differently, or things that you'd call out as maybe your happiest decisions that you made in 2023. As a builder, I've learned sometimes it's nice to look back.
Well, I'm pretty happy with how we did 2023. It was a year of focus and sort of getting back to basics, and sort of believing in our own theses. I think in 2022 and maybe a little bit of 2021, we tried to go in too many different directions at the same time, and maybe lost a little bit of momentum that way. But we've made a ton of progress, and I think if I could do anything differently, I would just do it sooner.
Yeah, and Mark, I mean, on your side, you got 5 months on your belt as the CEO of Polygon Labs. I don't know if there's any early learnings there, but obviously you've been with the team much longer than that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the big thing for us is that was really exciting is launching a Polygon 2.0, right? I think we've had a vision for wanting to onboard all mainstream users into the Polygon ecosystem, but that was done in similar to what Ron was explaining, in like a kind of dispersed kind of way. And Polygon 2.0 really brings together like a vision from a technical perspective that says this is what the Polygon ecosystem is going to look like, and with very clear direction on how to actually execute that. And so for me, the excitement on having this vision that we can go execute on, that allows for the feeling of like one chain, but the control over like multiple chains for each kind of developer, gets me extremely, extremely excited. And if I think about kind of what we could have done better, I think it's the bull market phenomenon, which is like not being focused enough, right? It's like you go chase different things that are available. And so Polygon 2.0 is really bringing us back home and saying, we're going to focus on building this. And from there, we'll be able to see all the devs executing on top of Polygon, which is exciting.
Yeah, I think that might be one of the hardest things about this space in general, is just trying to time the excitement to what you're building and planning out appropriately, because as we all saw, the tides can change quickly. And now it seems like it's going in the opposite direction. But regardless, I want to congratulate both of you guys for doing great things this year, and also to your communities of building on Polygon, building on Flow. I thank you both for coming on, and congrats again on being nominated as the Crypto Project of the Year here at Coinage. The vote is now live, at coinage.media/vote, and we'll let our NFT holders make the call there as a decentralized show. Roham, Mark, can't thank you guys enough. Thanks for taking the time. I'll let you get back to the excitement down in Miami, Roham, and what you got going now over there for you too, Mark. But thanks again for popping on, and appreciate it. Congrats again, guys.
Thanks for having us. Great.
Awesome. We'll see you guys soon. Everybody, thanks again for joining us here on another Crypto Project of the Year Spotlight. We'll see you again soon.